with another process video for Lottie Loves Paper, and I'm also using the Scraplift from the Facebook group Scrap Squad as my inspiration. So I'm just going to mention that throughout the video to talk about how I've used it and how it's inspired my layout and the changes I've kind of made. So I'm using the Simple Stories Heart collection that came from Lottie Loves Paper, and I need to tell you that this video does count as an advertisement for Lottie Loves Paper. I'm starting my layout with some mixed media, which is different from the original. The original is very clean and simple, and there was a picture of that original in the stills at the beginning of the video. But I'm liking a bit of colour on my background. So I've got my Kuretake watercolours there in different shades of gold. They're beautiful metallic paints that are from my stash, and I'm just adding some colour onto that background to create a base for my layout. I'm going to pop that aside to dry in a minute, but I'm just adding some splatters first. And then I've got some strips of paper, patterned paper from the Simple Stories Heart collection. So I'm using the basic border strip that is on the original Scraplift layout, but I'm going to add a few more layers to it than are on the original. I've got that pretty floral design there, which I'm just punching an edge to. It's not hugely noticeable. You can't really see it on the video. You might be able to see it on the stills at the end and as I work through, because it's quite a tiny pattern, but it's just some little holes. It's a really pretty, delicate border, just adds a bit more interest. And I'm just having a fiddle around with some different patterned papers to have a look and see what layers I want to add. I've just got a piece of plain white cardstock in the background there to help me to see how that's going to look on my finished layout while my paint is drying. So I've decided on that green floral just to add a little border so that it breaks up the two black pieces of paper. Just going to cut a smaller strip because I don't need that whole width, and attaching that to the bottom layer of my black heart. I love that black paper with the gold hearts on. It's just beautiful. I've nearly finished it. I've nearly used it all. And then having a think about what other colour I want something to run along the top, and I've got this plain yellow cardstock from my stash, which I'm going to add along the top to add a different contrast. And it's the two predominant colours that are in that floral pattern. I haven't got a piece that's 12 by 12, you might notice, so I'm doing a bit of a budget job and joining two shorter pieces, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that I've positioned it right so that my photographs and ephemera will actually cover the join up. That's the plan. So applying my adhesive and sticking that down to the main border strip, and just sticking that slightly off centre. Toying with the idea of adding another layer. I really like that grey, but when I hold it against the gold I decide that it doesn't actually need it, so I'm going to leave it as it is. I like the contrast of the black against the gold. I'm going to put the rest of the photographs and ephemera together while my paint is still drying, and I can do that sort of off page and then add it on at the end. I'm going for this square photograph of myself and my partner. Now the original has a round photograph. I'm going with this little square one, but I have got a circle on that piece of ephemera there behind the photograph, so I'm keeping a circle in the design there somewhere. And I'm cutting some layers down to map my photograph on. I'm going to go with the same two coloured pieces of paper that I've used in the border, so that greeny floral and the yellow. And I decide I want them slightly askew, so I'm just unsticking them so I can pop them so that they're not quite square, rather than having them perfectly matched. And then I want a border around those ephemera squares. They're actually not ephemera, they're cut from a cut-apart sheet from the 12 by 12 paper pack, and I'm just putting a white border around them so that the bottom edge is not getting lost on that black strip of paper. I'm just using some old photo paper which I don't use anymore because I've got a Canon selfie, so I just use the Canon original stuff. Sticking those squares in place now, then I'm going to add my photograph with a bit of fun foam to give it some dimension, with the other two squares sort of lying flat behind it. Just sticking them down at an angle, and I'm only putting adhesive on where the pieces are sticking to the border of patterned paper. So now the eagle eye among you will notice that this piece of background cardstock is slightly different to the one I did originally. I didn't like how the paint had dried and it was a bit too blobby, so I did another one. And I'm much happier with this one. It's a bit softer, and it's got less and a bit more even. And I'm sticking my border down there. So I've rotated the sketch, so my border strip and photograph is sitting along the bottom 2/3 of my layout rather than on the right hand side as in the original. I am using a word along the border strip for my title, and that's also used in the original, but I've changed the positioning slightly and it's on the other side of the photograph. I'm using the sticker sheet from the Simple Stories collection just to add some more details in. I've got that pretty bunting sticker and some word stickers. There are word strips used in the original Scraplift, so I'm just kind of following that theme, which isn't difficult, to be honest. I use them for in most layouts. Really wanted to use that ampersand because it's gorgeous, but it really was too big, so we'll have to save it for something else. And just having a look through the other little bits of ephemera that I've sorted out from the ephemera pack to see what will fit around my embellishments there. So adding some little hearts. There's not as many. I'm using a few more little embellishments than is on the original. There's a flower and a leaf on the original. I'm putting a couple more in than they have used. I've got some little gold puffy stickers there, which I'm going to pop on somewhere. And then I'm adding some tabs along the right hand edge to balance the whole thing. There are tabs on the original, so I'm sticking with that placement. And I'm going to add a little word strip, and I'm also going to add those little gold puffy stickers there from my stash as well. I'm going to add a little yellow tab behind the other patterned tab because I thought that was getting lost a bit against that patterned background. So once that's in place, that's my layout finished, and I really hope you've enjoyed my video and seeing how I interpret that Scraplift layout, and I look forward to seeing you here again soon. Thanks then, bye.